Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing okay today. Today, I bring you a conversation with Joao Moura. Joe is a software engineer from Brazil and the creator of CrewAI, a framework that allows you to create systems of AI agents. Joe started a career as a software engineer and transitioned into machine learning and artificial intelligence later on. This time, he has created his own company that focuses on creating multi-agent systems. This company, CrewAI, is backed by some of the greatest and most influential people in the industry of AI. So much that Joe himself has become one of these most influential figures in the industry. CrewAI, as I mentioned, is a framework that allows you to create multi-agent systems from a very high-level perspective. The systems are very useful to automate complex workflows and tasks in pretty much any company in any industry. In this conversation, we're going to be talking about the development of CrewAI, how he started it, and the big revolution that this kind of frameworks and workflows are going to start in the industry in general. This revolution involves the automation of several departments in many companies and the introduction of a new kind of workforce with the advent of AI agents. We talk about the deployment of this kind of multi-agent systems to production and some of the recommendations for those who want to start off in this new industry. I'm pretty sure that you will find this conversation very educational. And without any further ado, I bring you Joao Moura.
There we go. Okay. Joe, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's great to see you again. It's been a while since our last call, and glad to be here to pick your brain about CrewAI, the AI industry, and what you see coming up in the future of your company and the sphere in general.
I gotta say, I love this. The more chance I have to appear in podcast, the better, because people are starting to thinking that I'm an agent myself. So that helps.
Well, I'll try to uncover that in a moment. We'll see. You were in San Francisco recently, right?
Yes, my life has been a lot of traveling, a lot of back and forth. For a while, was basically like one every 4 weeks I would be traveling to San Francisco. Right now, it's
Right.
a little less. It's one every 6 or one every 8 weeks.
Yeah. Have you ever lived there before, or?
I have been a little bit all over the place. So I used to do a lot of conference speaking back in the day, thinking back like 2014, So I would travel a lot, and I spent some time in New York, but I never like lived that full year abroad or anything.
Right, always in Sao Paulo.
hmm São Paulo, Brazil is where I call home, is where I have the family and everything. I have no doubts that because of CrewAI, I'm going to end up moving to SF eventually. It's just like figuring out the right timing.
Why is there not a big enough AI scene in Sao Paulo or in Brazil in general?
I think like it's starting to trending up. You're starting to see like more conferences and more people talking about it. And there's definitely like great engineers that have been thinking about this. So that is good. But I don't think it compares what is going on in SF. SF is kind of crazy right now. Like you have like 3 meetups a day. To the point that whenever I'm in town, I wonder how people get work done in here. Because like if you try to attend every meetup, like there's not enough time left.
Yeah, yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, same. I mean, haven't really considered going to SF, but at least moving closer to Paris, that would definitely make it more active in the AI sphere for me. But yeah, cool.
I I gotta say, one of like the conference that I used to do a lot was a conference called Takeoff Conference in Lille, in France, and I did that like 3 or 4 years, and I was amazed about the community. It feels like you folks have a lot going on there. I remember that Leroy Merlin was a big like hub for engineers. But yeah, that's my extent of the knowledge of the French culture around AI startups.
Yeah, France has a pretty big culture in AI, but it's rather, I feel like it's condensed in France. It doesn't really overflow to other countries, I feel. Not enough. Probably it's the language barrier. I don't know. Yeah.
Might be.
All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about CrewAI, your company. Can you tell us what is CrewAI?
Yes, CrewAI is an orchestration platform for multi-agent systems. That's the best way to describe it. Uh, CrewAI started as a framework. Matter of fact, it's still a framework. You can go on GitHub and check it out. And people have been using this framework to build amazing things. Honestly, we get impressed with like what people are able to build using CrewAI, and then we turn into a company where we, on top of keeping building the open source, we are also building and shipping solutions for enterprises that want to use multi-agent systems.
All right. So, I mean, to make it a little bit more easier for people who are not literate in CrewAI, you mean that you allow them to create agents, autonomous agents that are powered by AI, who are going to be able to complete tasks on their own? What kind of automations are possible with CrewAI?
Yeah, so usually the way that I try to explain to people is like everyone kind of has used ChatGPT and they understand how that works. And it's great. You go into it, you ask it to do something, it gives you an answer that is not great, it's okay. And then you, through iteration, you get it to give you a better answer. You give it feedback, you ask it to make it longer, then you ask it to make it shorter, and then at the end of the day you get something that you really like. So that works great, but in that dynamic you can see how the user is kind of like a blocker, right? Like you gotta be engaged in order to fulfill the task that you're trying to accomplish, or writing an email, writing a copy, whatever that might be. So AI agents is basically you allow the LLMs to do that themselves, either by self like iterating and critiquing its own work, or by pairing this LLM with another one so both together can iterate over that work. So when you do that, you kind of like remove the human component out of the equation and this becomes autonomous. And that's how an agent is born. Now this agent can perform a task on itself. You can tell you what it wanted to do, and if you give it the right tools, it can do some things. A lot of the usual examples and things that we have been seeing in the marketing is all around like research, reporting, data aggregation, all sorts of things have been kind of like uh, enabled by this, because it's basically automations 3.0.
Right. Yeah. What kind of of processes or workflows would you say that are better for this kind of automations?
So this is pretty cool because we get access, because we're an open source project. We have a lot of exposure about what people are building and how they're building it, either because of the community or because of telemetry. We understand a lot of like what is going on and like what works and what not. So I would say that a lot of the use cases that work the best is right now the more text based work. So that doesn't involve multimodal, at least for now. I think that's going to change this year. And also like anything that you would basically delegate to a junior analyst kind of work. So let's say that you, for example, for pharmaceutical companies, they do a lot of research. That's one use case that we have for one of our leads. They do a bunch of like research on drugs in order to understand how to better market them, how to better like uh, talk to doctors about them and all of that. You can basically have agents do all that research, read the interviews, understand what is happening, and kind of like come up with these reports and these presentations and these talking points that you can then use to train your sales team. You can then use to train your marketing team and all of that. This is just one example, but I have seen people automate all crazy stuff, even like manufacturing processes. I think have been using some Crew AI and has been very interesting.
Well, okay, so just to, I mean, to to kind of set a checkpoint here on what CrewAI is. You are creating these autonomous agents who reason by themselves. They iterate over their own prompts to get to the actual best answer that you would get by iterating yourself. And then you allow, what CrewAI allows you to do is to put several of these agents together so that they can automate these kinds of workflows, right?
That is part of it, but the other part is like a lot of what allows these agents to do great work is like how they interact with like the world. And right now it's like APIs or whatever that might be. So you need to provide the right tools. You can have an agent basically talk with itself and create a good text, but if you give it the ability to search the web and to scrape websites, now it can find content, it can get inspiration and can learn from that. You can allow it to connect to our database, so it now knows your customers and can search in. So I think like tools is another big component on what makes like great agents. So what CrewAI is on the open source side is a framework that allows you to do all that super easily. So any engineer that has tried CrewAI so far came back to us saying like, this is the easiest thing. Like, honestly, don't compare with anything that we have out there. It's so easy to build these frameworks with this because it almost reads as plain English. It's like agent, task. It's concepts that are easier to grasp.
Yeah, that's my experience with it as well. It just makes it so like as though you were kind of designing your team of humans, actually, right?
Exactly.
Is
And
that
that's
the
a lot of like
inspiration?
what we're doing. That is somewhat of the inspiration. I think the other fake inspiration as well. Well, there's I think there's two things that inspired me there. One is Rails. So I come from a Ruby community back in the day, and I used a lot of Rails. And Rails is kind of like borderline magical for some engineers. Some love it, some hate it for it. But one thing that Rails gets right is the idea of conventions over configuration. And it's so simple that it almost reads as plain English some of the times. So I took some inspiration from Ruby and from Rails on that to make sure that we could make something so simple. And then, as you said, I think like one thing that I realized early on is that the people that were putting the best agents together were managers because they understood a few things. One, they already had that mental model of like if I'm trying to accomplish something, who are the people that I would like hire for this? And then if I want to delegate some work, how do I set expectations of exactly what I want to come out of it? So I think that because managers already have that mental muscle of thinking that way, they end up creating amazing agents because they create the right agents, they create very descriptive tasks, they set very specific expectations. So I think that that is a lot of what the inspiration for CrewAI comes from.
Right. So, this kind of means that when creating this kind of crews of autonomous agents, one of the most important abilities, at least for these high-level frameworks like CrewAI, are more communication skills rather than programming skills. Am I right?
I think you are, unless you're trying to do something super complex that would involve like a bunch of external tools and all that. Then programming become like also like a major skill that you want to have. But I think like just understanding the problem, being able to dissect the problem, and then communicate that clearly, I think that goes such a long way. I still remember the first agents that I created. The reason why they worked so well was because before I created them, I did it myself. And then I took note of the whole process and like what I did, when I did, what I thought was good, what I didn't thought was good. So once I had a completely understand of the process, it was easy for me to translate that into an agent or into multi-agents in that case.
I see. Do you have any examples of workflows that you have seen that work well with these kinds of automations with autonomous agents, or like the most
Yes.
impressive that you have found, for example, or the most useful that you have found?
The most all right, so there are a few different answers there. We have a few very useful ones. So one that we use internally and we have customers that use as well and they really like is around sales. that helps a lot because in the past, how sales works is basically like you get someone that might want to buy your product, and usually you learn about them because they fill the form. So you have some information about them, you have their email, you might know like what company they work at, but that's basically it. So in the past, what people would do is they would enrich this data. They would basically like buy data from companies like Clearbit or other companies out there that sell data like some info and all that in order to get more data about this potential customer. So they now would learn, well, where this customer is based, how much money they might make and all that. And with that information, they would do what they call lead routing. So say like, all right, so because this person fits kind of this profile, I'm gonna delegate it to Alejandro because Alejandro will know like how to handle them. Here is an expert of this kind of like business, and that's how things have been working in the past. But now with AI agents, you can do so much more, and we use that internally, and we have customers that use this as well. So as the lead, as the potential customer fills the form and you get that information, I have a few different agents. One agent researches that person online. The other one researches the company online. Another one looks at our existing customers and try to find common customers similar to this one. Another one look at the things that we offer and try to find the Venn diagram between the things that we offer and this customer potential needs. And then another one basically come up with talking points like, hey, when you sit with this customer, these are the things that you should be mentioning, giving like where they are, their recent news, their data, their use cases, and all of that. And you can go even a step further. And in case of CrewAI, we have this agent write the initial email that we can then choose if we want to use it or not. But you can see like how this make the sales process so much better because now you can still have like your salespeople as you would, but now they have this tool that basically give them way more information, not only about the person, but like what they should be talking about and anything else, way more than what you used to have before.
Well, that's, I mean, practically, it is kind of a team of humans that you just created out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
In some
And the cool
sense.
thing is that yeah, and the cool thing is that they are saving like a lot of time. For example, we right now at Career AI on the business side, we have come somewhat of champagne problems. We have too much inbound. There's too many people that are interested into paying for Career AI Plus and use it. So it's important for us to kind of like understand and pick and choose at least while we don't want everyone using it to select what are the companies that we want to work with at this first point so that we can test it out. So this helps us to do it in a scale that would take us like dozens of hours to do ourselves. Like we would need to research every company, take notes on every company, compare them with existing companies. This would take hours for someone to do, and this group of
And
agents can do in a matter of a few minutes.
well, and I mean, this is kind of a new way of thinking about software and automations. How did you start developing this kinds of framework? How did the idea came to you?
Well, I guess you're right. This is kind of new kind of software. I think like we have regular software that we have developed so far, and we have this new category that is kind of like AI software that is very different from what we used to have. So if you think about regular programming and regular engineering, we basically had strict inputs, strict transformations, and then strict outputs. So you would have like very strong like type it inputs. You would know this is a string, this is an integer. Then you have like a very specific set of rules. You know, like this is gonna be multiplied or whatever, and then you're gonna have a very clear understanding on what's gonna come out of it. But if you think about AI applications in general, and multi-agent systems is one of these applications, it's the exactly opposite. You have fuzzy inputs, so you don't really know what is coming in. You have fuzzy transformations, you don't really know what the LLM will do with it. And you have fuzzy outputs, so you don't really know what is going to come out of it. But I think people love that because that application like can help you do things that regular applications don't. For example, ChatGPT, fuzzy input. The user can type anything. You don't know what they might be typing. Might be a math operation, might be a text, might be a code, might be a tabular data. You don't know. Then the GPT is going to do something with that, and you're going to have a fuzzy output, basically a long string. So when you think about things that way, people love it because of that. So it's basically a different tool, allow you to do something different, and I think there's a place for it. Um, but sorry, I didn't answer your question. Your question is how I start to develop the framework, right?
Right.
So I was doing AI since 2017. I thought that I was late for the game. Little I know. I was doing I was doing a lot of regression and classification back then. LLMs were not such a hit. And I joined Clearbit on 2019. And in Clearbit, I was basically a director of AI engineering. So I was basically hiring people to build this platform for enterprise back then. And with LLMs kind of like coming out of the gate and taking the world by the storm, I was spending a lot of time rethinking our systems and rebuilding them using LLMs. And that was such an interesting work, especially back like 12 months ago. There was not a lot of people actually deploying systems like this in production, especially not at the scale that we were doing at Clearbit. Was honestly an impressive scale back then. And and people are just like, wow, this is so interesting. So my wife came to me and said, why don't you share more about this online? She's a very wise woman, by the way. And she's like, why don't you share more of this online? Why don't you make like posts on LinkedIn or something? I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a try. Turns out I suck at it. I'm great at cheat posting on X, and I can do that all day. But LinkedIn is kind of like you want a well formatted idea, right? So that that was not as easy for me. So instead of doing it, I did what any engineer would do. I automated it. I created a few agents to do it for me. And those are my first agents. I basically had four agents that would write me. I would put my rough idea in, and they would basically transform into a fully fledged LinkedIn post. And I love it. And it worked so great. I got so many views, and like things are doing so good that I got hooked. I was like, I want to create more agents. I want to automate my life away. So that's kind of like what prompted me to think about I want to create more. So how do I do it? I look at around at the tools that we had back then. Basically, AutoGem was the main one, and that that didn't work for me. I was like, this is too much of a steep curve. Like, what is an agent manager proxy, whatever? I was like, this is not it. This is not what I want. I learned later that the AutoGem comes from like a research paper. So that makes more sense for me, some of the like decisions that they made and how they did it. But I look at ChatDav and I really liked it. I was like, oh, ChatDav's cool, but again, it's kind of like more experiment. It's not like a software for deploying in production. So I didn't find anything that did what I needed. So I put together myself, and that's how CrewAI came to be.
And when was that exactly the thing? I mean, when you started creating the first agents for LinkedIn, which year was it?
I started creating my agents for LinkedIn last year, around October, I want to say, because it was my anniversary, and I remember I was traveling with my wife, and what I would do is I would wake up super early, so while she was asleep, I would do some coding, and that was how I built the first version of CrewAI.
Oh, that's impressive. And how did it start taking traction? Did you already have like a network in like in the AI scene in Silicon Valley, or how did it start taking off?
Not really. I think a lot was like people really liking it. People really liking it, and I had some people that I knew in the valley just because I have been working remotely for companies in the U.S. for the last 10 years. So a lot of companies in New York and the valley. So I have friends, I have people that I know, but definitely not enough to make like a huge influence like Crew AI. But I think like people just started using it, and then I think in December things had a big spike, and then in January had another. and then we have been growing steadily since then. Has been like nonstop. um, I remember that back on the early days, like we would have a few people try Crew, and now there's not one single day that goes by that at least 80,000 crews are executed, even on weekends and stuff. It's crazy, honestly.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations for that, by the way. It's an amazing job.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I really appreciate that.
And let's talk a little bit as well about the design of the software. I'm interested in how you told me that you got some inspiration from Ruby on Rails. Thinking about the main abstractions that you have created for your crews, you have, if I am correct, please correct me if I am not, you have tasks, agents, tools, and then you have the processes that you are continuing to develop. How did these abstractions come to mind? Did you get any inspiration from any other orchestration frameworks, or was it completely your idea? Because it sounds very, very, very simple and very powerful.
Yeah. I think basically it is what made sense for me, because I had initially, when I built my LinkedIn agents, they were not CrewAI agents. They're just like agents that I coded manually. So when I was trying to convert them into something that I could reuse, I was like, well, this feels like people and tasks. And actually, a lot of the work that I did is still back in this in this whiteboard here. This is like this. I need to clean it up. This is from back of September, October. Was basically me trying to understand like how will these things work. So was a lot of like writing, honestly, playing with different ideas. I think one of the inspirations was Chetav in their paper. I really like this idea of role playing and how they prove it that role playing can make a huge difference on the output. So if you have an LLM that is pretending to be a CTO, it's going to behave in a certain way and it's going to answer like questions differently. And I put that to the test, and I was like, all right, this makes sense. This works. So I think that's where the role playing aspect of it came, and then was a lot of like experimentation. Honestly, I think a lot of what we do is experimentation. So we have like benchmarks. So whenever we want to try something new, we kind of like add it to the framework, and then we run a full benchmark that basically executes 300 automations, so 300 crews, and compare the results between 150 and 150 when without using the thing, when using the thing, and we see like, all right, is this better, is this worse? So we try to be to take a very scientific approach on what we add and what we don't add.
Awesome. All right. And in all of this scientific approach that you are, I mean, when you're developing it, what would you say that has been the most difficult part to develop in your framework so far?
Hmm. I think like the beginning is very easy because it's greenfield, right? So it's simple for you to add things, but later down you start to have like the stuff decisions, and any like as any legacy, or like not legacy, but as any code that grows, you end up finding yourselves in conflicting situations where you're like, do I break this in order to add this new thing? How do I make sure that I still support this for existing users? So I think a lot of that like starts to happening as you grow and as you launch new versions. Uh, I think memory was a thing that was harder to add than I expected. I would expect it to be a little more simple, but there's still work to be done there. I think there's still things that need to improve in memory. Let me see what other feature was kind of like tricky to add. Uh, mm, well, on the enterprise side, things were way more tricky, because on the enterprise side is where like we got a bunch of the work to kind of like allow you to basically bring your crews into production, and that was tricky. So that was, I gotta say, that was probably the hardest part of so far, even more than the framework itself. But yeah, we have so many ideas. Honestly, it's like we don't share the roadmap publicly, but if people knew, I think people would go crazy about some of the stuff that we were going to ship this week. Not this week, this year. Sorry.
I bet. I'm sure of that. I want to ask you as well a little bit more about the enterprise offer that you have. But before that, I'm interested in what you said about memory. Uh, what was the difficult part of integrating memory into agents?
So it's less about integrating. It's about like finding memory has a purpose, right? Memory is basically not only storing content, but also then retrieving content. And then what do you store and what do you retrieve? And then when you store and when you retrieve. So, for example, let's say that during the execution, while your agents are working together, you wanna have a shared memory among them. That's how CrewAI works. So you have a shared memory among all our agents. Yeah. So what happens is, when do you store the memory, and what do you store in that memory? Do you store the progress? Do you store the final result? Do you do an extra LLM call in order to extract the learnings and then you store those learnings? Do you do all of the tree? And then, if you do it, when do you do it? Do you do it in the end of the task? If you do it, you want to probably do as a background process. So you might want to use mood threading so the crew doesn't take longer because you added memory now. But then, if you're doing mood threading, what happens if the next agent wants to use that memory, but that memory is still being generated or written? And then, like, when you retrieve this memory, what exactly do you retrieve? Do you want to do rag over it? Do you specifically like search? So you can see there's a lot of different ways that you can cut here, and I don't think there's one right or wrong. I just think, like, you need to, again, you need to test it, like on a scientific process. You need to test it, like what works. If I like write a summary, if I write the actual output, if I try to do an extra call and store the learnings. So there's a lot of different ways and lots of different things that we played with in order to build long memory, short memory, and entity memory within CrewAI. And honestly, I'm very convinced that there is room to improve there. I think it's doing great and we can notice the improvement already, but I think there's room to make it even better.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And I mean, memory has always been a difficult part to integrate with LLM applications, right? And everyone seems to be doing them differently, or there seem to be so many ways to do it that finding the correct one for specifically your purpose is not always an easy task, right?
And the other thing is that, like, what is my purpose, right? Because we're a framework, so there's many people that are building different use cases on this. So whatever we do, it must be like somewhat generic that works for everyone. Or we need to take a very strong stance and say, like, this is the way that we're going to do it, and it's not going to be great for people doing X or Y, but it's going to work for everyone else. So yeah, I believe that one thing that has been serving as well, and we're going to probably keep doing it, is just have like be a very very opinionated about how we want to do things.
I see. All right. Well, I'm very eager to see how that comes about. Talking about, I mean, we have already explored a little bit about how CrewAI works and how it allows you to create your agents locally to automate pretty much any kind of tasks that is a bit step by step wise in your workflow. But once you have these agents in a local machine, how do you deploy them to production? How does CrewAI help you with that?
Honestly, that's a big piece that is missing out there, and we're trying to fix it as well. So if you think about it, CrewAI or any of the other frameworks that you have out there, what you end up doing is you develop this, and now you have something that runs on your computer. So it's either on your terminal or maybe in a UI, but you see it working. There is not much value on that unless you can. I mean, there is value on that, but the way that you multiply that value is by being able to integrating that with existing software, regular software that you might have, either UI or API or whatever it is. So that's part of what we offer on CrewAI Plus. So the idea there is, there's a bunch of features, but I think the main feature that people really like is this idea that you can turn your crew into an API in a matter of minutes. So you don't need to change anything on your code. You put your crew together, you push to GitHub, You go into the platform, you click a few buttons to make sure that you select the crew and you click deploy. And there you go. In a few minutes, that is now an API behind SSL with auto scaling and a private VPC, production grade. You can basically now integrate that with anything that you want, and you didn't have to change a single line of code. So that alone, like, it's super helpful because it kind of like fast track the experimentation to production phase. And that's what people really want, especially like companies that are trying this out. Most of engineers don't necessarily care about it because they're trying it out. But once that you go to production use cases where you want to be making money off it, this is a major feature where, like, hey, all right, now I'm willing to pay for this because I'm actually going to bring this into a production environment. I'm actually going to make money from this and whatever it might be. So that's one of the main features, but there's so much more. Like, we have a bunch of templates that you can deploy in one click. There's like so much that we are building in there.
Wow. That sounds really impressive. And yeah, I mean, the step from experimentation to production is probably the most expensive one, actually, right? Because, I mean, for experimentation, you pretty much need prompt design. And for deploying to production, that requires some very, very tough skills for ML ops and server management and all that. Am I correct?
Exactly. Like, if you think about it, like, you could still like do this without CrewAI Plus. Like, yes, but then how many people we would need and how long it would take for you to figure out how to convert that crew into an API, then set up server, then deployment, then CI, then CD, then monitoring, then have people to monitor that, then keep things up to date. Like, that can be a problem, right? So we basically, like, we take all that for you. You don't need to worry about any of that, and it just works. So I think that's a big component out of it. Yes, and yeah, goes a long way.
Wow, yeah. And all of that is also makes me think that it's not only geared towards software engineers, but also towards general managers from other companies that would want their processes automated, and they would be able to automate them without creating a machine learning team within their company. Am I correct, or is that an error?
No, you are correct. Honestly, like, I believe CrewAI is simple enough that you don't need to have an AI engineer to use it. Like, regular software engineers can use this and deploy AI applications within their companies without having to worry about it. And the cool thing is that we're also shipping the UI. So the UI that allows you to build these agents without having to do any coding. So I think that's going to be another big unlock, because now imagine that you can go into CrewAI Plus, you can build your agents using this UI, you can click deploy and they are live and you don't need to do anything about it. So this can be like super useful, and they're going to probably be dropping that UI in the next 30 days. And because I know that the community is super excited about it, we're gonna probably allow anyone to use it. It's gonna be probably part of a freemium account so that anyone can use the UI, because I think it's something that everyone should get access to.
Well, that's super cool. And yeah, I mean, just to be clear that the people listening to this understand this, because so far, in order to use CrewAI, you have to code, you have to create your classes, you have to know a little bit of Python in order to create your automations like this. Would that graphical user interface allow non-technical people to create their automations or not?
Yes, actually, you wouldn't need to code at all. You can just like click and create your crew and click deploy, and it's going to be live. And there's more features that we are building on top of that. Is that I don't want to screw up the surprise, but honestly, it's going to be so cool. But yeah, people, like, basically without any like coded knowledge will be able to deploy these crews. And what we are finding is that because we made it so simple on CrewAI, like the syntax is so simple, what we are learning is that a lot of people that never coded before is actually working with the library and writing the Python code, because it's so simple to do. We have like two people in the community, for example, and I was amazed about it. They used to work on design agencies, and they would basically do work for like other companies as members of these agencies, but they're not engineers. They're basically researchers in that. And they using CrewAI, they built a fully fledged research crew that can go online, research articles, research news, put together reports, and now they're selling that. They're making money out of it because they have this crew that does the works for pennies, and they selling it for big brands. Last time that I checked, I think they're selling to like companies like Walmart and such. It's honestly, it's amazing. Yeah.
That's super impressive. And yeah, I mean, this shift from code to a graphical user interface will probably make it a super powerful tool for pretty much anyone in any business. That's okay. Very disruptive, I have to say. Awesome.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah. About that, tell me also, I mean, we have covered a little bit about CrewAI Plus, but just to summarize what it is, can you please answer the question, what is CrewAI Plus?
CrewAI Plus is an enterprise offering on top of CrewAI, the framework. So it's basically four different things. One, it's a platform. So it's something that you can log in into. And in that platform, you have access to a few features. Between those features, among those features is the ability to deploy your crews. And you can turn them into APIs, you can turn them into React components, you can do a bunch of them. Uh, on top of that, there are other features in there. You have templates that you can use, you're going to have the UI, and you're going to have a lot of other features in there. Then the other three pieces are more geared toward regular enterprise contracts that imply you have support. So all these open source projects out there, they're great. But what happens on a random Friday when things go offline? Who do you call? If you're on an open source, maybe you jump in a Discord, you ask for help, you create a pull request, whatever it might be. Well, in CrewAI Plus, you actually get proper support. We have a support team. You're going to be able to call us. You're going to get us online. You're going to be able to help you. Then there's the security part. You get things like single sign-on. You have SLA. You have everything that you need in order to bring these things into production. And then the final piece is this ability to have access to our team. And this is more for like the high end plans, people that are really going like for production and like they're gonna be paying a lot of money for CrewAI Plus to get into that. But that's like when you get what we call implementation partner. So that is basically access to people on our team, senior members from the CrewAI team that will help you a few hours a month to figure it out, how to implement, how to think about this, how to break this concept. It's a very interesting offer. But again, it always builds on top of the open source. We internally we use the closed version of CrewAI that has a few things that we need in order to make all of that to work, but it's based on a fork from the open source. So the open source is not going away anytime soon.
That's good to know. Yeah, and okay, so about that, I am interested in the support part that you mentioned. Does this mean that if you have a company, because some companies do not really have a tech department, maybe they may have one person responsible for the tech side of their company, right? And we also mentioned that this offer would allow you, your company, to automate your workflow without having a machine learning team, which would be ridiculously expensive. How many people would you say that you need in order to collaborate with this service that you offer on CrewAI? Or do you not, I mean, can you do it without any tech people? Is a manager, a regular consultant going to be capable of interacting with the CrewAI team?
I think it depends on how technical you want to get. Like how custom is the process that you're trying to automate, right? If it's like as long as it's not too technical, you might not even need to be a tech person if you have the UI. But if it's like a very specific technical implementation, there is internal rag, there's internal connections to databases and all that, then you're going to need an engineer. Doesn't need to be an AI or an ML engineer, can be a software engineer, but you're going to need them. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like where I draw the line. I think in the end of the day, it's gonna probably be something that engineers teams will use to build complex automations, and then you're going to have smaller departments like sales, marketing, and all that building simpler ones using the UI.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So, in short, I mean, in summary about that, does that mean that a company that would like to automate their business using CrewAI, the orchestration framework, with the graphical user interface, would go from having a machine learning team to hiring a single tech person who will be able to collaborate with the CrewAI staff, who would in turn do the implementations and the deployments of all of these automations. Am I correct there?
Yeah, that could be one way to roll it. Yes.
Awesome. That's going to change a lot of things in many industries, I suppose. Um, can you give me more examples of places where this kind of automations could be useful? Because you mentioned in sales, which is, for what I see, extremely useful. You use it yourself. Which other examples do you see people applying this for?
Yeah, I think it's very much a long tail where you have a few areas they're very like people using it a lot, and then you have like this a set of like small use cases and custom use cases that people use it. Other than sales, marketing is another one that we see a lot of people using it. Again, doing research on the product, research on competitors. Sorry about that. So research on the product, research on competitors, finding out all the commonalities, thinking about positioning, then writing copy, creating content. So marketing in general has been another great use case, from like generating newsletters to generating blog posts to generating Instagram posts, and not only generating the content like you would do with like regular chat GPT, but tying that with doing the research, with looking at your data, with like everything that would come before that, that would make like a very good end result, something that you wouldn't get for free if you're just using like ChatGPT. So marketing is another big use case, and development is also trending up. So we use it for development locally as well. For example, the documentation for CrewAI. All the docs of CrewAI right now are written by a crew. Like we don't spend like time writing docs ourselves. So we update the code, and then we have a crew that'll do rag over the code, rag over the docs, see what is missing, and update the docs to include it. And that's it. There you go. We're gonna probably make that a template, but yeah, writing documentation is like something that we don't do anymore, unless when it's like a brand new feature that like there was no previous documentation about. Then we kind of like start writing those offs. But like updating docs with like new attributes, new features added, we don't do any of that. Uh, and even the benchmark that I mentioned, like how we compare new versions of crews with old versions of crews, we actually have a crew that does that. So the crew look at the results, score it, look at the other results, score, compare the both, and all of it.
All right. Wow, impressive. Something else that I wanted to ask you about this software that you have, and that is probably among the most important ones, is about monitoring and observability. Is that taken care of by CrewAI Plus, or does the company have to incorporate their own observability service? How does that work?
So right now, if you look at the market, the way that I look at observability is I think that is such a complex problem in itself, especially if you're trying to do it well. I think that can be such a big component that we just are not spending much time with it. So what we find is that people are usually deploying their crews using agent ops or Langsmith in order to do observability. We do have metrics and we do have logs that we show to you, and we allow you to see like what is happening and the memory, and even like are looking to allow you to replay certain steps, so you don't need to replay the entire crew. But I think there are better tools out there. They're dedicated only to fixing that problem. They're doing great work, like Langsmith and Agent Ops. So yeah, we're not really trying to fix that. I don't think that you would necessarily need them to get going, but yeah, it's something that you probably will want if you're bringing things into production settings.
I see. I mean, just for the listeners, Agent Ops and Langsmith are two tools that allow you to monitor your agents and to see step by step what they're thinking about and how they perform the actions so that you can debug your own prompts. Am I correct with that description, or do you have something to add?
No, you're correct. I think Agent Ops is more specific to, geared towards agents, and Langsmith is more like geared to any LLM application. But yeah, you got on point. Basically, monitor your LLMs, your prompts, your calls, and give you metrics on all of that.
All right, thanks. And okay, so we talked about Crew AI, the open source project. We talked about Crew AI Plus, the service that you propose to companies that allow them to deploy their automations without having to create their own machine learning team, which would probably be too expensive, and taking advantage of the expertise of your team. Now, that is going to be, I hope, very disruptive. Um, how how do you see the world? I mean, the industries in general changing in the next few years with the implementation of these kinds of automations with agents running parts of people's business?
I gotta say, I believe that even if you look at CrewAI itself, like our business is partially operated by agents. Like we have agents writing docs, we have agents helping with sales. So like we have more agents than people employed on our team, just because we have so many of them doing so much stuff. So I think like this is a reality coming no matter what. But what I'm finding from the leads and customers that we are working with is that the ones that do the best are the ones that frame this as not replacing humans, but you're promoting humans to now manage these agents. So now agents is just like another two in the two set, similar like a bunch of like very highly skilled and fast interns. So basically, you have like this people now managing these agents and saying like, hey, let's trigger this to do the research, let's trigger that to do the report. But the humans is still kind of like packaging things up, thinking about how to presenting, putting these things together. So all that is still happening. Um, and I think like the companies that are doing it that way are probably the ones that are benefiting the most.
Right. I see that as a light at the end of the tunnel, at least for the people who are pretty pessimistic about AI replacing humans in many jobs. That means that we're. I mean, do you think that does that mean that humans are not going to be completely replaced, but rather they are going to be able to get more done? Am I correct in that, or do you think that there are some people who are probably not going to have a job at all later?
I think both are true. I think people that are going to still get a job are going to be able to get more done faster, and as similar when you introduce any other tools, like even going back to industrial revolution, like we're just going to be able to do more with less. Uh, but yes, there's going to be people that are going to lose their jobs due to AI for sure. And I think we as a society, we need to figure out what that means and how we're going to go about it. And I know there's all sorts of interesting ideas, like a universal income is one of them, and there are other ideas out there on how like you could address some of that. I think like these debates will need to happen way faster than what they are happening right now, because I think we're not too far from people like actually like missing jobs because of that. I think some of that might be already be happening, but it's just like not at the scale where like people are really worrying. But you can definitely tell that companies are start to wondering like, all right, how much can I automate with this? How can I deploy this and how much time can I save? And if that frees up my people to do something else, that's great. But then the next follow-up question is that like, do I need these people then? So um, I think it's something that we need to be mindful of. I think both statements are true. People that work are going to be able to do more with less, and other people are going to probably have a harder time to find a job.
This sounds like a double-edged sword to me, because that would mean that some people who are not precisely the entrepreneurial type would have it harder to get going, especially if they are not into the AI scene. And some other people who are creating projects will be able to get things 100 times faster, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you again, I just gave you an example a few minutes ago of two people that never coded before and now have their own thing and they're making money on it because they're using AI agents. Not everyone is a fast learner like that. Like not everyone's going to be able to catch up so fast. People that do will have better opportunities and will move super fast. And people that don't will definitely going to tag behind.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be up to our societies to find a way to help with that change of age in some sense, right? Because this age of automation is probably going to take a lot of people um, uh, without expecting that.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's going to be honestly intense debate around all of this. And I think we're already seeing some of it happens, right? Congress in the US has started talking about regulations on AI and all of it. So, and also EU is taking like a very strong instance on like AI and how training data and all of that. And training data is just like one way like to try to protect and preserve rights from like people that do artistic work and all of it, but there's so many other components beyond the training data, right? And how you can actually deploy these agents and these AIs. So yeah, I think it's going to be an intense debate as anything in the world right now, but hopefully we as society find a way to work around it.
Yeah, hopefully, let's make it our job to try to make it as smooth as possible, this transition. But yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
going to be very disruptive, and I mean, that's probably a good thing, because we're going to be able to get much more done, and to in the process help a lot more people as well.
Agree. Honestly, I think overall it's going to be net positive for sure. That's my hot take.
What other hot takes do you have about this kind of scene?
I think AGI will come sooner than later. I
You
know.
think
I
AGI will
don't think
come?
it's. I think sooner than later. I don't think it's gonna be in the forms of transformers, though. I think it's we're gonna need to figure out something else. But I think it's gonna come sooner than later. I think right now we got into a stage where the incentives aligned, where like one, you breach the gap between software engineers, entrepreneurs, and AI and ML experts, because now everyone converged and like the wall that used to keep like people separate now it's has a big hole on it. So these people are talking. And then two, all that is generating a lot of money. So because generating money, people are pouring more money into that. So you have all the right components in there. It's just about giving it time and mixture in the right way, and you're gonna get some stuff that's gonna be amazing. So I don't see the development pace decelerating anytime soon. What give me what makes me think that AGI is not too far along if keep things the pace they are.
And about this position that you have, I mean, this idea that you have about AGI, I'm interested as well about your background. I don't think I asked you before what you studied. If you're more on the side of machine learning, or did you have? Because you told me that you had experience with Ruby on Rails. Do you come from originally a software engineering background?
I come originally from a software engineering background. Yeah, my my personal life has been a lot of like learning different things. So I started programming super early. I started learning Visual Basic at the age of 12, and I never stopped since then. So I learned HTML, then ActionScript, then I started to play around with Fireworks, Dreamweaver back in the day, freehand. I'm probably giving away my age here, but that was some of that. And and I never stopped since then. So my background is definitely around software engineering, um, and that's what I did for most of my career. A lot of like some of PHP, some Ruby, some Python, a lot of Elixir actually. Then all the front end stuff, and yeah, that has been a treat. I enjoyed every single language that I played with so far. And then again, I joined the AI game in my mind what was late in 2017, where I actually started to do regression and classification models with Python and scikit-learn and PyTorch and all that. And yeah, super interested on that as well.
All right. And yeah, I mean, so can you tell me more about what would you recommend for a software engineer who wants to transition into the AI business?
Well, I would say there's a lot of content out there, so that's good. People are putting content on a lot of different stuff. So if you want to learn something, you can definitely find on YouTube for sure. The matter is if you find in a way that is easy to digest and easy to learn. So without giving away too much, by the way, quick question: when does this podcast drops? When people will know or will hear it?
Probably in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks.
All right. So by now, the multi-agent course with Andrew Ng and myself will have dropped. So if you want to learn about AI agents specifically and multi-AI agent systems specifically, I would recommend that. Just because it's very like from the beginning, you know nothing, all the way to like I want to put like this very complex use cases together. So I partnered with Andrew Yang in the deep learning AI team to put together this course, and it should drop on May 15. Unclear. Let's see. We are really rushing it, but yeah, we did all the recording, and now we're putting together the final edits and everything. So this is one resource, but again, this is only for multi agents. Like there's so much more around AI that you could learn. You can learn regular like regression classification. There's a lot of value on that still. So I would recommend checking out anything around scikit-learn for that. Uh, Definitely recommend you get familiar with like some of the most common Python libraries that helps with like AI in general, things like pandas and NumPy, and then yeah, any of like the new fans AI applications that we have floating around, things like RAG and all of that.
Oh, okay. So first thing, for the course that you mentioned, would you mind providing a link so that I can add it in the description? That way we can sync the publishing of this interview with the release of your course. That sounds pretty cool.
When the course drops, I'll let you know. I don't have a link because Deep Learning AI is doing other things. It's going to be on their platform. It's going to be free. I'll let you know. Yeah, I'll let you know when they give me the link. But yeah, it's a free course on Deep Learning AI. If you're in this podcast, you probably know Andrew Yang. But if you don't, he's one of the founders of Coursera, and he is the creator of one of the most famous courses on AI and machine learning ever. In matter of fact, he's hard to talk to. I gotta tell you, it's not everyone that sometimes is like just visiting the White House. So I gotta tell, he's a big deal, and was great to work with him on this. And I'm super excited. There's going to be a free course explaining everything about multi-agent systems. The examples are going to be CrewAI, but the course is not about CrewAI. The course is about multi-agent systems. What is an agent? How to make them work? Everything about it.
Awesome. Okay. So whoever's listening to this, please be sure to click the link in the description if you're interested in that. I'll try to get you to that course as soon as possible.
Nice.
And second thing, about the roadmap that you should take if you're a software engineer. In this case, you mentioned that someone would probably need to know the basic machine learning algorithms and the basic machine learning models in order to transition into an AI engineer. Is that mandatory, or is it all right if someone just understands how to use a large language model API?
No, it's not mandatory. I think we're past that. As long as you can, as long as you learn how to use LLMs, you learn their APIs, and you learn some of the most important frameworks out there. So CrewAI, LangChain, Llama Index, that should allow you to do anything that you need. A good way to compare is like I don't know. You can do great programs using like Python and Ruby without necessarily understanding C. For example, that is the compiler of Python. So you don't need to learn C in order to learn Python and use like Django to build an amazing framework. So this would be a good comparison. Like right now, like you can learn the high level abstractions and you can build amazing things with that without having a deep understanding on what is happening behind the scenes. I do believe that if you learn what is happening behind the scenes, you tend to be better at it just because you have like this mental model and you know like what you're writing, what is going to be the impacts of that. But I don't think one should or must learn. I think no one should and must learn. Sorry, let me get this one. I don't think one must learn it in order to build amazing applications and become an AI engineer. I do think there's benefits in learning it, but I also understand it's a big undertaking.
Right. All right. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And last couple of questions that I wanted to ask you, more towards the career of the listeners of the podcast. What if you were starting off today? Do you think is it too late to get into the AI scene, to start a business in the AI scene? Because you mentioned that 2017 felt a little bit like too late. Do you feel like today it is too late to get into the AI software?
Hell no. So I have a few things that I have strong beliefs in. And one of them is that time's gonna pass anyway. Like if you think about, oh, it's gonna take me a year. Well, guess what? This year is not gonna stop. It's not gonna pause. The year is gonna pass anyway. Like the 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, whatever it might be your time frame to learn something, that time is not gonna wait for you. It's gonna pass anyway. So I think what you need to ask yourself is like, hey, 1 year from now, what I will wish I have done, and that's what you should do. Like even if you think about, hey, am I going to have a job in a year from now? I know a lot of people like are wondering about that, like how this will impact myself, my career, and all of that. Honestly, we have way less control over our life than what we would like to believe. We like to believe that we have more control, but in matter of fact, we just don't. You don't know. You might be crossing the street, and a bus hit you. So what I would say is, what are the things that you do have control? Well, you have control about the things that you use and the things that you learn. That's within your control. So think with me, independently of like what happens to the market, will you be better off by learning these tools now or not? And I strongly believe that you're going to be better off if you learn these tools now, because whatever happens to the market, I think who knows these tools, who had familiar with them, are gonna be better positioned to the future than someone that don't. So even though you don't have control over the market and the conditions and the companies and all that, maybe use the levers that you have at your control to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success.
Okay, that's pretty interesting advice and very useful advice, I'm sure. So it's never too late to get into this
Never
industry.
too late. I
Amazing.
mean, I usually say, like sometimes when I miss a date that I think that it was important. For example, I would say, well, I wish I had started learning AI on 2015, but I didn't. Well, I guess I would need to do the second best time, and that's now,
Yeah,
right? Because you already missed the
yeah,
you missed the best, but now you have the second
yeah.
best, and
Kind of
that's right
like,
now. So don't
yeah, like just
don't miss it out.
like investing. The best moment
Exactly,
to start investing was 20 years ago. Best time is now.
exactly.
Awesome.
And this is investing. This is investing in yourself.
Indeed, probably the most important type of investing that you can make. And last question in this topic: if you were starting off today, what kind of company would you create?
Ooh. Honestly, I would create CrewAI again. Someone like when I was like deciding making CrewAI into a company or not, a good friend of mine asked me a question. He asked me like, "Hey, you know that if you start this is something that people don't realize. When you start a company, especially like if it takes traction or if you raise money, there's no way out for you. Everyone can fire, can quit, can leave. You can't. So this is something that people don't realize. So this person asked me like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because you're going to be doing AI agents for like 10 years. That's like what a startup company is." And my answer was so ready. I was like, "What else would I do?" Like honestly, think about this. If I was not building CrewAI, I would be building agents for another like company. And this is just the way that business are gonna work in the future. So whether you want or not, you're gonna be building agents moving forward, and you're gonna be doing that for different companies. So I would rather be building this platform rather than anything else. So if I had to start something new, I would start CrewAI.
Right. All right. So agents, it is. It is the topic of the decade, probably.
It's what I'm gonna be doing for the next few years, probably the next decade. So you know where to find me.
Awesome. I can only wish you the best for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. All right. So we're getting to the end. Do you have any other things that you would like to share? I don't know, maybe some teaser for new developments that you're doing, or something else that you would like to mention?
Hmm. Let me think about the features that we have on our roadmap and one that I could tease people with. All right. All right. I don't know if I should share this one, but I'm going to do it anyway. Uh, but I'm not going to share it all. I'm just going to hint it. So you build your crew, right? Your crew has a bunch of agents on it. They're going to do some work. And that's great. Sometimes they're not consistent though. If you think if they were human, what makes humans to do more consistent work? Well, I guess you could train them. I'm going to leave at that.
All right. Okay. That sounds interesting. Sounds like you're going to give some sort of personalities to your people. Let's see. Can't wait to see that coming out.
It's not too much, but I can tell you it's going to be pretty sick once people see it.
All right. Awesome. Okay. I'm sure that'll ring a bell then when it comes out to people who have heard this. Awesome. Well, that's pretty much all for my questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe, for joining the podcast. And it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. You're a wonderful person.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone listening. If you're using CrewAI, honestly, it goes without saying, but I'm so thankful for you. Honestly, it is a lot of work building this, but it's so much fun, and that's because you use it. So I don't take any of this for granted. I really appreciate the fact that you're using CrewAI and they're having fun with that. I'm super open to feedback. Follow me on Twitter. I post a lot in there about CrewAI, and send me notes if you find any bugs or anything. Just shoot me a message and I'm going to reply to you for sure. And yes, I really appreciate all the community. Thank you for everyone on the CrewAI team. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Amazing talking to you.
Thank you.